They said Daniel was the man every woman in Lagos admired. Young, handsome, and wealthy beyond measure. His boutique was the most sought-after place in town, filled with the latest fashion and dripping with luxury. People whispered about his charm, his smile that could soften hearts, and the effortless way he moved through the city like he owned every street. But beneath that dazzling exterior was a restless heart. For a year, he had been with Grace, a woman as beautiful as the finest gowns she wore. Grace could captivate any room the moment she entered, her laughter light and enchanting. Yet recently, Daniel felt a shadow growing in his mind, a question that would not leave him. Does she love me, or the wealth I represent? He wondered. Grace often bragged about having a rich boyfriend, flaunting his name like a prize. She joked with her friends that she would never marry a man without money. And Daniel's friends were not shy about speaking their minds. Bro, she's not in love with you. She's in love with your money, they warned him. Daniel wanted to believe otherwise. He wanted to trust that Grace's love was genuine. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, and it was growing, twisting in his chest. That morning, as he adjusted his expensive watch, Daniel knew this was no ordinary day. Today, he would find out if Grace truly loved him, or just his fortune. Daniel watched from a distance as Grace and her friend Ruth approached his boutique that afternoon. Grace was radiant, dressed in a sleek designer dress, every step confident and deliberate. Her laughter filled the air, light and carefree, but Daniel's eyes narrowed, searching for the truth beneath her polished smile. He had shared his plan with Leo, his most trusted sales assistant, earlier that morning. Leo, nervous but willing, had agreed to play the role of the boss today. He would wear Daniel's finest suit, sit behind the desk, and act the part of the wealthy owner. Meanwhile, Daniel would disguise himself as a lowly worker, faded jeans, a worn t-shirt, and unkempt hair, a complete departure from the man everyone knew. Leo had chuckled when Daniel explained. You really want to see how she treats me? I'm ready. Daniel nodded. It's the only way to know what she's really like. If she truly cares, this won't change anything. Grace and Ruth entered the boutique, their eyes bright with excitement. Grace's gaze landed immediately on Leo. She smiled warmly, calling him sir, with an air of reverence. Her voice was sweet, her manner polite, a sharp contrast to how she treated Daniel when she noticed him standing quietly among the racks. Without a word, Grace dismissed Daniel with a flick of her hand and began ordering him around, her tone sharp and commanding. Daniel's heart sank, but he said nothing. He would endure whatever was coming. He needed to see the truth. Grace's eyes sparkled with amusement as she directed Daniel to fetch dress after dress. Her commands came swift and cold, like a ruler ordering a servant. Bring me the red ones. No, not those. Are you blind? She snapped, her voice cutting through the quiet boutique. Daniel obeyed silently, stacking the dresses carefully on his head, feeling the weight of humiliation settle deep within. Yet, he kept his gaze low, determined to see this through. Ruth, standing beside Grace, shifted uneasily. She whispered softly, Grace, maybe you should be a little kinder. He's only doing his job. Grace rolled her eyes and laughed lightly, loud enough for Daniel to hear. Please, Ruth. People like him need to know their place. When I marry rich, I won't even have to look at workers like this. The words stung sharply, more than any harsh tone or glance. Daniel's heart ached, but he remained silent. He watched as Grace's true colors shone through, a stark contrast to the woman he had once thought loved him. Leo, sitting confidently behind the desk in Daniel's suit, observed quietly, a knowing smile tugging at his lips. This was far from over. Grace's impatience grew with every moment. She barked orders like a queen commanding her servants. At one point, she glanced at her shoes and then pointed sharply at Daniel. Come here. Kneel down, she demanded, her voice icy and unyielding. Daniel hesitated, the sting of her words heavy in the air. But he forced himself to obey. Slowly, he knelt on the polished floor, feeling the weight of every gaze in the boutique. Grace smiled cruelly as she slipped off her heels and began trying on a new pair, as if Daniel's kneeling was nothing more than a prop for her amusement. Do you want me to report you to your ogre? She sneered. You're just a worker here. Know your place. Leo, unable to watch the scene unfold without speaking up, stood and approached Grace gently. Madam, he said, voice calm but firm. Perhaps kindness would be more appropriate. He is only trying to help. Grace laughed dismissively, shaking her head. I'm the customer here, she said coldly. He should be grateful that I'm even speaking to him. The boutique fell silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Daniel's heart pounded, But inside, a fire began to burn. A fire fueled by a truth that would soon change everything. As Grace continued to command Daniel, piling more clothes onto his arms and head, the atmosphere in the boutique grew heavier. Other customers watched in silence, uncomfortable yet unwilling to intervene. Some glanced nervously at the imposing figure of Grace, others at Daniel's quiet endurance. Ruth stood close by, her smile fading as she observed the harshness in Grace's tone. She knew this was more than just impatience or stress. It was cruelty, thinly veiled behind a facade of sophistication. Leo never took his eyes off Grace. He was the only one truly aware of the role he played in this unfolding scene. Daniel's disguise was flawless. The only thing missing was the truth waiting to be revealed. Grace's voice echoed again as she barked. "Faster. Move. Don't drop anything." Daniel's legs trembled under the weight, but he did not falter. The weight on his body was nothing compared to the heaviness on his heart. In that moment, Daniel's mind was made up. Today, the mask would fall. Today, the truth would be unveiled, no matter how painful. The boutique's atmosphere was thick with tension as Grace's demands grew louder and more impatient. Daniel moved quietly but swiftly, his body aching from the weight of the clothes he carried. Every order from Grace felt like a strike, every sharp word a reminder of her true feelings. Ruth watched from the sidelines, biting her lip. She had known Grace for years but never seen this side of her, cold, dismissive, and harsh. The doubt that lingered in Daniel's heart now found its echo in Ruth's eyes. But behind the counter, Leo's smile grew wider, the moment of truth drawing near. Grace's harshness reached a new height. Her voice echoed sharply across the boutique as she snapped. "Do you even understand what I want? Hurry up. You're slower than a child." Daniel's hands trembled as he balanced the growing pile of clothes. The weight wasn't just physical. It was the crushing realization that Grace's love might have been a lie all along. Ruth's eyes filled with sadness as she watched the scene unfold. She glanced at Daniel, who remained silent, but his eyes told the truth. A story of betrayal and heartbreak. Leo stepped forward gently, his voice calm but resolute. "Madam, maybe you should remember that respect is earned, not demanded. He's been nothing but patient." Grace scoffed, brushing off Leo's words with a dismissive wave. "I'm the customer. He should be thankful I even speak to him." But the air had changed. The facade was cracking. The real Grace was showing, and no one could ignore it anymore. The tension in the boutique was thick enough to suffocate. Grace continued to order Daniel around, treating him like a mere servant rather than the man she once claimed to love. Daniel obeyed without a word, his heart heavy with disappointment. Leo, sitting confidently behind the desk in Daniel's finest suit, finally decided it was time to break the silence. With a calm smile, he looked Grace in the eyes and said, "Madam, I have good news for you. Everything you picked today is on the house, completely free." Grace's eyes widened in surprise. A slow smile spread across her face as she replied, "Oh, that's very generous of you, sir." Leo's smile grew wider, and he pointed directly behind Grace. "The real boss has been here all along," he said softly. Grace turned slowly. Her eyes locked onto Daniel, the man she had been ordering around all afternoon. Her face drained of color. Daniel?" she stammered, disbelief and shame flooding her expression. The boutique fell silent. Every eye was on them. Daniel stepped forward calmly, his eyes steady and unflinching. The crowd around them held its breath, sensing the weight of what was about to unfold. "Grace," Daniel said quietly but firmly, "you spent all afternoon ordering me around like I was nothing. Yet, I carried every dress, every shoe, without complaint. Why? Because I wanted to see the real you." Grace swallowed hard, unable to meet his gaze. Her pride and facade were crumbling before everyone. Daniel continued, "I wanted to know if you loved me for who I am, or only for what I have. Today, you showed me the answer." Grace's face flushed with shame. The boutique's polished floors seemed to close in around her. You don't understand," she whispered, desperate to explain, but the truth hung between them, undeniable. Daniel turned to the silent crowd, then back to Grace. "This is where our story ends." With that, he set the piles of clothes on the counter and walked away, leaving Grace to face her own reflection and the harsh judgment of those who had witnessed her true colors. The boutique remained silent after Daniel walked away. Grace stood frozen, the weight of her actions pressing down on her like a heavy fog. The shoppers who had watched the scene unfold began to whisper among themselves, some shaking their heads in disappointment, others offering sympathetic glances toward Daniel. Ruth quietly approached Grace, her voice gentle but firm. You need to think about what just happened. This wasn't just about clothes or money. It was about respect. Grace's eyes filled with tears, but pride kept her from speaking. She realized, too late, that her obsession with wealth had blinded her to what truly mattered. Outside, Daniel breathed in the cool Lagos air, his heart still aching but feeling lighter. He had learned the truth today, and though it was painful, it was also freeing. Sometimes, love isn't about luxury or riches. Sometimes, love is about respect, kindness, and seeing someone for who they really are. Days passed since the incident at the boutique, but the memory lingered in Daniel's mind like a shadow. He couldn't forget how Grace had treated him. The coldness in her eyes, the harsh words, the way she had dismissed him when she thought he was just a worker. But with time, Daniel found clarity. He realized that true love should never come with conditions or demands. It should be rooted in respect, trust, and genuine care. Meanwhile, Grace struggled with her own thoughts. The humiliation she faced was a harsh lesson, one that forced her to confront her values. Was she willing to change? Could she learn to see beyond wealth and status? As Daniel focused on his boutique, he began to rebuild. Not just his business, but his belief in himself and what he deserved. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of Lagos, a new chapter was waiting to be written. Daniel returned to his boutique with renewed purpose. The lessons of the past weeks weighed heavily on him, but they also strengthened his resolve. He vowed to surround himself with people who valued him for who he was, not for his wealth or status. His days were filled with hard work and quiet moments of reflection. The boutique, once a symbol of glamour and charm, became a place of authenticity and sincerity. Customers noticed the change, the genuine smile, the careful attention to every detail, and the warmth that Daniel now carried. Grace, on the other hand, was forced to confront her own reflection in a way she never had before. The facade of luxury and arrogance had crumbled, leaving her with nothing but questions and regret. But Daniel's story was far from over. Sometimes, the most painful endings are just the beginning of a new, unexpected journey. One afternoon, as Daniel organized new arrivals at the boutique, a familiar figure appeared at the entrance. It was Ruth, Grace's friend, the only one who had shown even a hint of kindness during the ordeal. Ruth smiled warmly. "I wanted to apologize for what happened. Grace's actions don't define who you are." Daniel regarded her thoughtfully. "Thank you. Sometimes people reveal their true selves in unexpected ways." Their conversation was brief, but meaningful. For Daniel, it was a reminder that not everyone judged him by his wealth or status. Some saw him simply as a man deserving of respect and kindness. As Ruth left, Daniel felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something different, something real. News of what happened at the boutique had spread quietly through Lagos. Grace found herself isolated, no longer the center of admiration she once was. The glamorous image she had cultivated was fading, replaced by whispers of arrogance and cruelty. One evening, Grace approached Daniel's boutique alone, her footsteps hesitant. She wasn't there to demand forgiveness or explanations. She was searching for a chance to make amends. Daniel noticed her immediately, but remained composed. "Grace," he said softly, "this isn't about holding grudges. It's about learning to value what truly matters." Grace nodded, eyes downcast. "I've realized I was wrong. I let greed blind me. I want to change." Daniel studied her carefully, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "Change takes time," he replied. "But everyone deserves that chance." Grace returned to the boutique several times after that evening, each visit quieter and more sincere than the last. She began volunteering her time, helping with small tasks, showing humility in ways Daniel had never seen before. Daniel watched cautiously, but hoped. Trust, once broken, was not easily mended. Yet, beneath Grace's regret, he sensed a genuine desire to grow beyond her past mistakes. Slowly, a fragile bond began to form, built not on wealth or appearances, but on honesty and respect. They shared quiet conversations about dreams, fears, and the true meaning of love. For Daniel, it was a lesson in forgiveness. For Grace, a chance at redemption. Sometimes, the hardest journeys lead to the most unexpected destinations. Just as Daniel began to believe that things could truly change, a new challenge appeared. A wealthy client arrived at the boutique, impressed by Grace's renewed presence and eager to offer her a lavish lifestyle far beyond Daniel's modest beginnings. Grace faced a choice: to return to the life of luxury and superficial admiration, or to continue the difficult path of sincerity and humility she had started. Daniel watched silently, waiting for her decision. It was the moment that would reveal whether Grace's transformation was real or just another mask. After a long pause, Grace looked at Daniel and said, "I choose the path with you. No more pretending. No more chasing empty dreams." Daniel smiled, relief washing over him. It was a moment of truth, not just for Grace, but for them both. Grace and Daniel stood together in the boutique, the place where their story had been tested, broken, and now slowly rebuilt. The wounds of the past still lingered, but so did the promise of something new, something real. Daniel looked at Grace, seeing not the woman obsessed with wealth, but someone who had learned the value of respect, kindness, and genuine love. Grace met his gaze, her eyes filled with gratitude and hope. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Daniel smiled softly. "We all deserve a second chance. What matters is what we do with it." Outside, the sun set over Lagos, casting golden light over the city's bustling streets. For Daniel and Grace, it was more than just the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new journey, one built on trust, understanding, and true love. Sometimes, the greatest tests lead to the most beautiful beginnings. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this message. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and what act of kindness inspired you today. Thanks for being part of this journey. Until next time, remember, even the smallest act of kindness can change a life. Africanstorytelling.